From now on, I'll decide when we talk or spend time together. Stop chasing me. Those words hit Daniel harder than any argument they'd ever had. She said it without raising her voice. Cold, measured, like a boss setting boundaries with an employee. Then she picked up her phone and scrolled through it, as if the conversation was over. He stood there in the living room, his hands trembling slightly. His wedding ring catching the afternoon light. "Maya, what does that even mean?" he asked softly. She didn't look up. "It means," she said, her tone flat, "I need space. You've become too much. I can't breathe in this house anymore." Daniel's chest tightened. Too much. For years he'd done everything he thought a husband should do. Working overtime, fixing the leaking sink, making coffee the way she liked, even remembering her clients' names just so he could ask how her work was going. "Space," he repeated. "You're saying you don't want me around." She finally glanced up, her eyes tired, distant. "I'm saying, stop making me feel guilty for not being who you want me to be." And that was it. No tears. No raised voices. Just a line drawn quietly in the middle of their marriage. For the next few weeks, Daniel tried to respect her space. She started coming home late, claiming meetings, client dinners, traffic. The first few times he believed her. But one night, while waiting for her, he noticed something small, the perfume. Her favorite scent had always been a light floral one he'd given her years ago. But lately she smelled different, stronger, muskier. He'd caught a trace of it on her scarf when she hung it up. It wasn't hers. The next day, he checked the passenger seat of her car. A faint smudge of lipstick, not her shade, was on the coffee cup lid rolling near the mat. His stomach dropped. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe she gave a coworker a ride. He wanted to believe that. But then came the change in her phone habits. The laughter she tried to stifle while texting. The way she always turned her phone face down. Every night, Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying her words. "Stop chasing me." He didn't know when it happened. When love had become something to be managed, measured, and scheduled like a business meeting. One Friday evening, she said she'd be working late again. Daniel nodded and watched her leave, forcing a smile. Then, half an hour later, he put on his coat and followed her car at a distance. He felt sick doing it, like some jealous fool, but the doubt had eaten away too much already. Maya's car turned away from downtown. Not toward her office, but a quiet restaurant near the lake. She parked, stepped out, and walked toward the back patio, where a man was already waiting. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The man stood up when he saw her, smiling. Maya smiled back. A soft, familiar smile Daniel hadn't seen in months. She reached out, touched the man's arm, and sat across from him. Daniel couldn't hear what they said. He didn't need to. He stood there behind a row of parked cars, watching the woman he loved, the woman he'd built a life around, laughing with someone else like she used to laugh with him. Something inside him broke. He didn't confront her. Not that night. He went home, sat in the dark, and stared at the framed photo on the shelf. Their wedding day, her head resting on his shoulder, both of them laughing in the sunlight. Felt like looking at strangers. When Maya came home hours later, she smelled of wine and that same musky perfume. She slipped off her heels quietly, thinking he was asleep. Daniel watched her from the shadows, heart pounding, a single question echoing in his mind. When did I stop being enough? Days passed. Daniel withdrew. He didn't ask where she was going. Didn't wait up anymore. Maya noticed he could tell. But instead of guilt, there was relief in her eyes. One morning, she walked into the kitchen where he sat with his coffee and said, "We can't keep pretending everything's fine." He looked up slowly. "You mean you can't keep pretending?" She sighed. "Daniel, don't do that. You've been distant." He laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Distant? You told me not to chase you. I'm just following orders." She hesitated, looking at him as if trying to find the right words. "I didn't plan for things to get like this. But people change." "People don't change overnight," he said. "They just find someone else who makes them forget who they promised to be." Her face went pale. You're not being fair. No, he said quietly. You're right. Fair would have been telling me before you started meeting him. Silence. The kitchen clock ticked. Her eyes flickered with shock, then guilt. You followed me. I had to see, he said, voice trembling. Because I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. She covered her face with her hands. It wasn't supposed to happen, he finished for her. That's what people always say when they've already made the choice. Maya looked up, tears brimming. Daniel, I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. He shook his head slowly. You didn't just hurt me. You hollowed out everything I believed about us. They slept in separate rooms after that. Days turned into weeks. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Daniel tried to focus on work, but every email, every meeting felt meaningless. Nights were the worst. The silence in the house seemed to mock him. Sometimes he caught himself scrolling through old photos, remembering how she used to hold his hand even when she was mad at him. Now she barely looked at him. One night, unable to take it anymore, he walked into her room. Maya, he said quietly, do you still love me? She looked startled, as if she hadn't expected the question. Then, after a pause that felt like a knife twisting in his chest, she whispered, I don't know. That was the moment he realized the marriage was already over. Not because she'd cheated, but because she'd stopped caring enough to try. A month later she moved out. No dramatic goodbye, no closure. Just 2 suitcases and a final look that said everything she couldn't. He stood by the window, watching her drive away, the taillights fading into the night. For a long time he didn't move. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. He spent the next few weeks relearning solitude. Cooking for one, sleeping on his side of the bed, deleting her number a dozen times but never blocking it. Sometimes he'd walk by the lake where he'd once seen her with that man. Not out of bitterness, but to remind himself of the truth. That love, no matter how deep, can't survive in one person's heart alone. Months later a text came. Maya. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're okay. Daniel stared at the screen for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Finally he typed, I'm learning to be. Then he turned off his phone and looked out the window. The sun was rising, soft light spilling across the quiet room. He realized something then. Healing wasn't about forgetting her or the betrayal. It was about remembering who he was before he spent all his energy trying to be enough for someone who had already stopped seeing him. And as he stood there, the words she'd once said, stop chasing me, no longer hurt. Because for the first time in a long while, he wasn't chasing anyone. He was finally letting go.